Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our homeschool roundtable. I'm so excited. I feel like we have not met in a good amount of time because of the holiday, but we're back, and today we have a special guest, and I'm so excited. I talked to a lot of you about what we wanted to kind of discuss in these next couple of calls, and I think the number one topic was feeling motivated and encouraged, especially for our older kiddos. And so I think when we're Pinteresting and we're online and we're chatting, there's so much about younger kids. But when it comes to our teenage kids and middle school kids, which I do not have any yet, Christal is she has so much wisdom in this area. And the multiple conversations that we've had over the past few months has allowed me to just automatically be like, Christal is the person that needs to come on here and chat, because not only has she raised and she's been in it, but she just continues to mentor me in what I'm doing, and she's super encouraging. And so I'm excited to have her here today. And I think, we know when we were talking that we would really like this to be open discussion and really have this as a roundtable and more of a conversation. That way we can each get exactly what, things that are going to benefit us, our questions answered. But I feel like in the beginning, I just want Christal to just share who she is as a person, as a mom, because I feel like we all know Christal, but we can learn a little bit more about Christal because she just has so much to offer. So after she's done sharing a little bit about herself, her and I are just going to go back and forth and just conversate a little bit, and then we'll leave it open. We'll open your mics and we can just have a discussion. So thank you, Christal, for being here.
Thank you, Jen. Thank you so much for having me here. It's been a blessing to be part of this community. And gosh, I know these ladies. They don't need an introduction. So I'm Christal. I am a homeschooling veteran, a military veteran. I run my own business called Homeschooling for Life. I teach, I coach, I train, I do behavioral analysis. I just share the experiences of my life with women around the world so that we can raise up a generation capable of sharing the love of God. And then we take the rest of it and we simplify it because it's not supposed to be complicated. So that's what we do. So that's kind of where I'm at. I'm super excited because I'm starting my my second mastermind course on the 18th, and I'm really excited about that because I've got some kids and some parents that are jumping in on that class. But we'll talk more about that later. I'm excited to answer the question that you presented to me earlier this week.
Yeah, so I think when you and I started this conversation off, I feel like younger kids are naturally more encouraged and motivated. And also they're excited about the rewards that maybe I share, and they're a little more scared of the consequences or intimidated of the consequences that parents can lay before them. But when they start becoming older, what is it that's going to motivate them as a person as we shape their hearts and teach them to, not only obey what the Father says, but also just enjoy what they're doing and feel encouraged as they learn, so we don't feel defeated.
Yeah, how many times have you laid across the bed with tears running down your face going, I can't do this. They're not listening. I can't get my kids. And even if they're little or older, it doesn't matter. Getting them to do the work is a tough question. It's a tough question. And it's a tough journey. And I can tell you that I don't do well with little children. But I can tell you Loyola Luvas does, and she teaches the other class. But for the high school students, I can tell you that that they sometimes need a different type of motivator or a different type of I don't know, focus, a different type of mindset to motivate them, right? So my question that I have, I guess, that I want to ask about that is, are you motivated? Are you, as a mom, motivated?
Yeah, I feel like it's so interesting because when you asked me that question, I feel like even now with my littles, I can become discouraged, and I realize that it almost throws off the whole balance of our home. And so I never even thought that when the children, like when our children grow up and become humans for themselves, and we still have to be encouraged. For some reason, I think in my head, I just thought, well, this is going to be a shift. I'm going to be encouraged. I'm going to share with them and get them excited. And then they're going to learn how to read. And then they're just going to be automatically encouraged on their own. And I think it's interesting because in public school and in the school system, we understand that kids aren't naturally motivated, but in the home, sometimes we lose sight of that. And we're like, well, we're home, right? Like, you're privileged to be homeschooled. Why are you not motivated? I do that now with my children. I become so, I take it personally almost, but then like Christal said, like, they are mini versions of us. And so even now, like when my children are done playing with a toy, I notice they're not picking up, and when they're going to the bathroom, and they're brushing their teeth, they're not putting their toothbrush away. And I've started to notice, well, these are trends that and habits that I necessarily don't have down, because I'm always worried about the next thing. So I'm like making breakfast for the kids, and then all of a sudden I'm on to getting their teeth brushed, and breakfast isn't cleaned up yet. So of course, like the everyday life skills as a mom with 4 young kids, but as they get older, like you're saying, Christal, I guess it's the same thing. So I would love to know how we can become motivated, right? Like, if that's the answer, not the answer, if that's one of the answers, I guess, what are ways that we can stay motivated as moms and be encouraged in like our everyday life?
So I found that motivation is a byproduct of other things. So motivation is not something that happens in the beginning. Let's take an example of, say you're going to go out for a run. Nobody's really motivated to get out for a run, to go out for a run. They have grit, they have determination, they have willpower, they have obedience. They know that there's going to be positive consequences if they go for this run, for their health. They know they're going to feel good. These consequences are what drives them to get it done. But then once they get out there and they start running, then they're motivated to go a little further or to run a little faster because they got going. Motivation is a consequence of an action. It's not something that comes first, it comes second. So what we have to do is, what is it going to take to get that action going? And I've found that there are three different things that lead up to motivation. Okay. And the first is purpose. If you have purpose, if there is a reason for you to do it, and we as moms, we have reasons to homeschool our children. We remember, and we come back and we revisit, why am I doing this again? Why am I doing this again? Right? Do our children say, why am I doing school today? And do they have an answer for that? Do our high school students say, why am I doing this? And what is their answer? What is their mission statement? What is their vision? What is their purpose? And if they have a purpose, generally it's because they feel significant doing it. There's a significance that is created when there is a purpose. And significance is one of the top 6 needs that every human has. So we need love and connection. We need variety. We need significance. We need certainty or security. We need growth. We need to have a contribution. But significance is the top number 1. We all want to feel significant. We all want to feel like that we're important to somebody or something or to some cause. So when we have purpose, we have significance. And when our purpose and significance gets on fire, we have passion. We're not born with passion. Passion is a result of finding our purpose, feeling significant, and acting on that in a way. And when we have purpose and significance that leads to passion, you're automatically going to be motivated. Now, all of this sounds wonderful, but how do you find purpose, right? How do you help your teenager find purpose? Can you think of some ways maybe you find purpose in life, or how you might help your student find purpose?
Yeah, let's unmute if you guys want to share some. Is that okay, Christal? I would love to.
Yeah.
what people have to say.
Absolutely. I can tell you that that you first have to develop a growth mindset in order to start finding your purpose. You have to start thinking outside the box. And what I mean by developing a growth mindset is you start asking questions. Well, why does the water boil after 6 minutes or whatever? And we do this already when we teach our kids school, right? We're already developing them a mindset because we're teaching them, we're making them curious. You have to ask questions. We should never teach our children answers. We should always teach our children questions. Okay, we should always say, okay, let's look at this. Let's look at this right here. What question would you ask to find an answer? Not ask the question. So if we're going to look at, for instance, why does water boil? Once you see bubbles start coming up in the water, what question would you ask yourself? That's what you start doing for your teenagers. What questions do you need to cultivate in your high school students? Because once they start asking questions, then they get curious. And once they get curious, they start developing a growth mindset. When they start developing a growth mindset, then they're going to develop a vision. And when they develop a vision, then they're going to want to take that vision and give it to somebody else or start pursuing it. Maybe they're going to want to start serving. Maybe they're going to want to be part of a collective, a larger group where they move collectively towards a goal. But they're not going to find that if the only thing we're shoving down their throats are answers. They're not going to find it if we open up the book and we give them a test and they fill in all the blanks and they close the book and they move on. That's not a growth mindset. If we are not cultivating questions in our high school students, we are not creating a forward movement in their mind. We're not creating a growth mindset. So instead of teaching answers, let's teach how to ask the right questions. And that's how we're going to find our purpose. And once we find a purpose to pour into, then we're going to start feeling significant. We as moms do this. We as moms have the same desire. We want to feel significant. We want to feel significant. We want to feel like that we're making a difference in life, that we're making a difference in our children's lives. Not only that, we might even want to feel significant amongst our peers. We need to ask ourselves, are we asking ourselves the right questions?
Christal, I think it's so interesting that you just I just want to touch on that about the asking the questions for us, because I feel like even when a lot of us have slowly come into Torah and really started reading the Bible as a whole, it was such a foreign, it was so foreign to me to ask questions about my faith and not just listen to what the world is saying, right? Even coming out of Catholicism and into just mainstream Christianity 10 years ago, I feel like even that was a lot for me, because I was like, wait a minute, I'm actually reading a Bible. Like I never grew up with somebody reading a Bible, right? I was just taught about the Bible. And then it went from reading the Bible to, wow, I don't have to just listen to what everyone else is saying. I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to figure it out for myself, and then start asking the questions, and also then teaching how to go through the sanctification process and having discernment about things, and that my walk is not going to look the same. So me as an adult, this has been something that I really had to work on, and it was hard for me. So I think this for our children and teaching them to ask questions is so important for on such an early age. I mean, Tish just said too, look back when they were young, they always asked why. And I think so many times we've been shut down. And even me as a mom, I shut my children down often and just okay, enough. And there is a boundary, of course, but when they're asking the right questions, not just questions to be smart, they're trying to become more smart, then sometimes I feel like, those are the questions that are going to get them interested to then realize what is my purpose, like you're saying. And so, and it just goes back to me now as, understanding what I believe in and knowing who I am, and knowing who I belong to.
That's right. Because we can't be an empty vessel that pours into somebody else. You know, I keep asking myself the question, why are we asking our children to be something that we're not? Why the very first place that we begin to motivate our children is through motivating ourselves and asking ourselves the right question and asking ourselves, do we have purpose? What is our purpose? What is our significance? How are we significant? How do we continue to move forward in such a way that our significance is going to lead to a passion? And if we can't build within ourselves the ability to ask the questions that we need to ask to build, to grow ourselves, to grow our own character, then we'll never be able to teach our children how to ask those questions. So one of the things that, you know, the question about how do I motivate my high school student, or how do I motivate my students into action? You can't motivate your children. You can be a tyrant, and you can bully your children. We as women, I tell you right now, we bully each other terribly. As women, we are all the time telling somebody what they need to do and how they need to do it, and what works for you better work for them. And if they don't do it your way, it's not going to be fine. And we're bullies. And I'm actually going to be teaching a class on how to deal with bullies. And it's not about your high school kids or your students. It's about how we bully each other. We bully each other in our Torah walk. We bully each other in our homeschooling because we expect everybody else. But that's not how you motivate. You don't motivate your children through through demanding. Let's look at the Torah portion this week. Okay, this is what's really cool. In the Torah portion this week, it's all about consequences. It's all about consequences. If you do this, then I will do that. If you don't do this, then I won't do that. If you keep Shabbat, then you could be blessed. If you don't keep Shabbat, you won't be blessed. If you keep the sabbatical year, if you bless the land, it's all about consequences. God knew when he laid it all out for us, he wasn't going to demand us to do anything. He wasn't going to sit up on his throne and cry because he couldn't get his kids to obey. You know, he's up there going, obedience brings blessings, disobedience brings pain.
Yeah, and like you said earlier, like when we were talking, I really liked how you were saying how he doesn't wake up that morning and say, "Oh, I'm in a good mood today. I'm just going to pour out these blessings." Or, "Oh, I'm not in a good mood today. So, now there's a consequence." But I feel like as parents, like going back to us being motivated, like we also cannot be parents of chaos, and I do believe that being flexible, and if it's a beautiful day and you want to go to the park, like we talk about that all the time, not always having to be so routine about things and really enjoying the presence with our children. But I notice when I don't feel motivated as a mom, and I don't have things that, I need to get done, and I don't stay on top of it, and I'm not encouraged, then the chaos comes. And then it just becomes like, well, today mom is not in a good mood. So, I'm not going to be doing the fun things. Or, oh, you know what? Today I'm kind of in a good mood. So let's not do any work and let's go to the park all day. And I think, yes, there's like room for that, of course, just like there's room for being like, okay, enough with the questions. However, I think understanding who our children are, and focusing on being encouraged and staying motivated as parents, then we're teaching our children that there is a consistency, that there is consequences, and that there are blessings when we do listen. My question for you, which is not, I don't think one we touched on, but I've been meaning to ask you. So if we're trying to write the commandments and help write the commandments on our children's heart because they want to obey, how does that then, like, where do we go from consequences and blessings or whatever, to then being like, well, this is for you and you need to write it on your heart? Like, is there a time where, like, when they're younger, which is kind of what we touched upon, they can't see past a certain point.
Yeah,
And
when they're
in
younger,
middle school, they can't see
that's,
past graduation.
yeah, that's a really good question. And I think that there's some neurological, I'm not a doctor, I'll just say, but I think there's some neurological studies that I read out there that you're either going to be 24 to 26 years old before you can see in the future, before you can see past tomorrow. High school students and college students alike are great at procrastinating. You know, well, my test isn't due until the last week of May, so I'll wait till the week before, right? Or whatever. They don't have the ability to plan that out and say, oh, well, the test is, I got to build up to that. So lots of times long-term vision is harder. What I mean by that is if you have your high school students sitting there and they're trying to learn a subject, and you know that this subject is going to be something that they use in their life. And this is a young man, and I'm just throwing a scenario out there, and he is going to be the breadwinner for the family. And you say, you need to learn this because this is going to be important. There's your wife and your children and your next generation is going to be reliant on you to know this. That is so far out of his scope. He can't, only thing he's thinking about is his baseball game next Sunday that he's going to have to go be part of, or when his friends are coming over on Thursday night to have a good time. Or maybe he's thinking about, I just want to get in there and play a video game for a little while this evening. I just want to be done so I can go do other things. It's harder for them to see the bigger picture. However, the answer to your question is, at what point do you get them to internalize it? You get them to ask this question, what's in it for me? And you help them answer it. And that is not a selfish question. That is not a selfish
Which
question.
I thought it was. Like when we were talking, I was like, I always thought that it was selfish for my child, especially now my oldest, to be like, why do I have to do this? Instead of being like, wow, that's a really good question. Let me share why. And we were even saying too, like I have some friends that have children in the school system. Just yesterday at baseball, there was a baseball game and the moms were like, he literally does the bare minimum for this project when I know he can do so much more. And it's so funny because as a homeschooling mom listening, I was like, yeah, of course, because A, he's not motivated to do it, or B, he doesn't understand why. But when we're at home and I'm telling my son to go do something and he's questioning me, I should allow him to have, I guess, the voice and the room to question and understand.
Yeah. And you don't give them answers.
Mm.
Okay, this is what's really interesting. They're not going to internalize it. You want them to internalize it. They're
Right.
not going to internalize answers unless they come up with those answers. So when they ask, what's in it for me, mom? In whatever language, in whatever mood, or whatever actions that they ask that question in, you turn it back to them. That's a really good question. What is in it for you? What is in it for you? What is the rewards for you mastering this task, or for you meeting this deadline, or for you tackling this priority? What's in it for you? And when they say, well, if I get it done, then maybe can I I don't know, go play outside for a while, or can I um call up my friend and us, maybe if they drive, maybe they want to go to a movie, or so do you think if I get it done I can go to a movie? All right, you don't get it done, you don't go to the movie. Fair enough, works for me. Yeah, let's drive on.
That's so interesting because I always felt like I didn't want to do that for some reason. Like I expected even my young kids to just do it and obey, when in reality, I still have a hard time listening to the father and obeying, right? And sometimes my thing, hold on, my thing for them is, mommy, 1 second, please, is, oh, Shema, oh, I don't, they're not listening. My husband, I like, you Shema, like, and then sometimes for me, it's, I even have a hard time, and I was just sharing about this in the Jen Doobie's, I think, like, she just had her first call, and it was a really good one about just loving like Yeshua does. And she was saying that, like, the way that we love Jesus is, of course, we're going to obey, but at the same time, also why, and she's going through the whole thing. But one of my questions, or one of the things that I said was, there has been some times during Shabbat that I've done things
Mhm.
that I didn't just listen and obey, you know, like I did go do something and then realize, wow, I really didn't receive that blessing. And it was almost like I didn't receive it. And so I learned that way by the consequence of, I probably shouldn't have went to that party. Was I buying and selling? No. Was I outside? Yeah. But at the end of it, I realized that because I didn't listen and I didn't hear, like I received the consequence. And so I'm still motivated by that, but yet it's so hard for me then to understand that my kids are the same way, I guess, because I just want them to listen.
They are, but what we want to do is we want to look past that. I mean,
Okay.
rewards and consequences are a very good place to start when you ask what's in it for me. But you want to get past just the rewards and consequences to the purpose. Okay, you want to get past the purpose. Maybe they have, for instance, you found an opportunity for them to serve, and they're serving at, okay, I'm going to say an animal shelter because I don't have any. Let's say an animal shelter. They want to serve at the community animal shelter because they love animals. And the consequence would be, and they found that that's purposeful to them and it makes them feel significant. And they know that they can't do that if they don't get their schoolwork done. It's a little bit deeper than just the rewards and the consequences, because now you're tapping into, this is a passion. This is becoming a passion of theirs. This is becoming their purpose. And they're realizing that if they don't do what they need to do, they can't function in their passion.
Wow. I feel like now it's coming full circle because now I
Yeah.
understand why we use the consequences and the rewards, because it
Mhm.
allows them to stay in line and then figure out their purpose. So that in life,
Mhm.
they can be who the Father created them to be and have the discipline at the same time.
Exactly, because what's happening when they're younger, you have rewards and consequences.
Right.
But then as you get a little bit older, you start finding out things that you really want to serve and do. And what happens is about middle school to high school, we don't start cultivating a purpose in their life. We don't start cultivating a significance in their life. We just want to keep continuing on with the rewards and consequences.
Oh, when they don't even like, yeah, okay, well, yeah,
And
get
we
it
need,
done so you can play video games rather than
yeah.
allowing them to understand. Yes,
Mhm.
and I guess too, for me, like a motivator, then going back to that thing with Shabbat, is that I felt tired all week and therefore I couldn't be the best. Like I couldn't get homeschool stuff done with my kids because I was tired, you know, I
Mhm.
couldn't do things that I needed to do and I was up late, you know, and so I see that like I then can't fulfill my purpose because I was disobedient and I didn't follow through with what I wanted to and rest on Shabbat like I should have been doing. And then in return, then I realized like it does have something to do with my purpose. So then for our children,
Yeah. But
it's
you know what? You have a purpose now. You've gone
exactly
from
right.
doing your school, because there's consequences and rewards for that, to finding purpose, and that purpose is to raise up a generation. Your purpose is to build these you have purpose in homeschooling your children. There's purpose there. You have a purpose for doing it. And the thing about it is that rewards and consequences are self-centered. Purposes and significance are other people centered. And when our children are little, they're learning about themselves. But when they get up into the high school age, they need to start thinking outside of themselves. And when we go from obedience in the Torah, do this and you'll be blessed, don't do this and you'll be cursed, pretty soon we get to a level where I'm just going to do it because I love the Lord my God with all my heart, soul, mind, and strength. I forget about the blessings and curses. I just want to love him. That's when it's gone from consequences to internalizing what we are cultivating in our children, which is a purpose and a passion and a significance. And what we do is we raise our children up. We grow them up through these academics. We grow them up through these academics and we teach them how to, and then we expect them to go out into life and use these academics in a tangible way. What we need to cultivate is this growing outside of ourselves, growing up past these things that are, first we ask, what's in it for me? Now we get older, we're asking about, okay, what's in it for them? Because now I want to be, what's in it for these animals if I don't show up at that animal shelter? What's the consequences for them if I don't feed them today? What's the consequences for them if I don't pet them today or go over and clean out their cages? If I don't serve in that, I've got to get this schoolwork done because these animals are counting on me to give them their food. You're going from personal consequences to being able to have a significance in another creature or another human being's life. And what we do is when they're young, we teach them this is good, this is bad, this brings blessings, this brings curses. And then we get a little older and we realize, okay, what is it that you want? Where do you want to serve? How do you want to be part of a collective? What cause do you want to join? Maybe you want to minister to the veterans or work at the homeless shelter or something outside of yourself. What are we introducing our children to that would create a purpose in their heart? What are we introducing ourselves to that's going to create a purpose in our heart that's going to lead to making us feel like there's a significance, that we have significance. And when we have that significance, it's going to be cultivated into a passion. And that is where you transfer consequences to just love, obedience to God's word, to stay out of his smite box, or transferring it over to I just want to be in his love box. Right around that middle school age, we have to start helping them think outside of themselves. And the what's in it for me then becomes I feel significant. And when they feel significant, they're going to be more motivated as young adults to do this. And it's being this, you have to do this because you're going to be the breadwinner, is just throwing another rock in their backpack to carry. Just another burden and another responsibility.
Yeah, I like what you said about the burden, because I think sometimes as moms, it's easy to just say things like that because it's almost like taking the burden off of us and throwing it on them.
Mhm.
Like, well, we need to check our boxes today. So here, do this because I don't know, and then we're just throwing them, like you said, something heavier to just keep loading onto them, creating that
Mhm.
anxiety instead of the significance. So
Yeah. I mean, I teach a class on living intentionally, and we go through, we want to make a difference. We want to make a difference doing something that makes a difference with people who make a difference in a time that makes a difference. And when you do that, when you find those steps, when you find those things and you put them together, then you find passion. And when you find passion, you don't have to worry about motivation. That's a byproduct. It's just going to happen. But what are we doing to help our children find purpose? What are we doing to help our children feel significant? And when they're finding these things that feel purposeful and makes them feel significant, are we cultivating it enough that it's turning into a passion? And if they have a passion, then how are we instructing them in such a way that even passions come with responsibilities? Even passions come with responsibilities. We can't go out and do our passion if we don't have the money to do it, right? So you have to get A done so that you can have B, so that your passion can see fulfillment. Right? Okay.
yeah, I feel like that was great. I'm sure we have enough that our minds is going to be like thinking about for the next years to come. I feel like for the first time I truly understood the trend, like going from one to the other, and now understanding how to cultivate for that, for them. So I would love to hear, is anybody doing that right now where they're helping their children find that? That's what I would love to know.
Anybody?
or any questions even for Christal. I mean, we have a wealth of knowledge here, so ask away.
Can you hear me?
I can.
When you said that, I was thinking that is a great question, that to find their purpose, or to at least start the ball rolling so that you can get to the passion part of it. But the question, I thought, oh man, even if I heard that question as a grown adult, I don't know that I would know what to do with it. And the question was, like, okay, so what do you want to do? And so I thought I would need a list.
Yeah.
like real tangible things in your town, whether it's volunteering at a shelter, or some kind of animal shelter, just all kinds of different things. So I think if there was a tangible list in your area, even for myself to choose from, to take, it's like writing in the blank page, the dreaded blank page that I've had, like with the process of writing. So if there can be things on the page already, then there's something not nearly as scary about it. And then the steps are closer together, maybe. And then I think I could go from there, and I think my children would be the same way.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we go back to that same statement. How can we ask our children to be something that we're not? How can we ask our children to discover something that we don't have? But this is the wonderful thing about homeschooling, is that we don't have to have the answers. We find the answers together. So if we don't have a purpose, we can find a purpose together with our children, and we can become part of their purpose, and they can become part of ours. And actually, that cultivates the family unity, because then it becomes a family purpose, and it strengthens that bond between family members that will carry on into adulthood, which is exactly what we need, because we are so fractured in our families nowadays that even discovering a purpose and a significance and a passion together cultivates a stronger family bond. But the very first thing that we have to do in order to start discovering what our purpose is we have to have a growth mindset. We have to be able to ask questions of ourselves. We have to sit down. We don't sit down with a list as much as we sit down with a bunch of questions. We don't start with the answers. We start with the questions. We are in this world where we're all about finding the answers. We don't need to find the answers. We need to find the questions. We constantly are seeking answers. God doesn't want us to have all the answers. He wants us to have questions. When you go talk to sages, and you're asking sages questions, well, what does this mean? Or what does that mean? They answer you with questions. They don't give you the answers. So when we sit down with our high school students, or our students, or ourselves, or our husbands, or our family members, or our sisters, or our brothers, or whoever, because we're looking for the byproduct of motivation, which comes by way of purpose, significance, and passion, then we have to sit down and we have to ask ourselves, do I have a growth mindset? How do I find a growth mindset? I ask questions. Do I have a vision? No. Can I have a vision? Can that vision be wrong? Can it just be a vision, something to shoot for? Can I be part of a collective? If this one principle I know is true, if we make it to our destinations by ourselves, we did it wrong. Because if where we're going is in solace, we've done it wrong. We were never meant to be a solo entity. If you go back and you look at the Torah portion right now, and you see that he's talking about the sabbatical year and the land in Israel, and the sabbatical year has to do with the land in Israel. If the land in Israel does not lay dormant, then the children of Israel suffer. let's think about that for a minute. I'm grafted into the children of Israel. I'm not in Israel, but if Israel makes a choice not to let the land lie fallow and rest, I suffer the consequences because I'm part of Israel. Israel, but I'm part of the Israelite family, and the Israelite family is held to that standard. We don't live in a world of solace. We live in a world of collectiveness. The body of Christ is one bride. We cannot make it by ourselves. So we ask ourselves, where am I part of the collective? What causes are out there that I can put myself into? What books can I read that will help me understand the mentors, the people that I want to speak into my life? Because that person who wrote that book can speak into your life by way of the written word. He doesn't have to be present. So what people are we putting in our lives? What books are we putting on our shelves? What people are we putting in our lives that are speaking into our life in such a way that it cultivates a cause and a purpose that maybe we can go discover? And what happens if we discover that cause and it doesn't fit? Do we just quit? Maybe we want to discover another one. We're not after answers, people. We're after questions.
And I guess growing up too, like for me personally in school, we were taught to find the answers, even this, I have little science boxes that my kids get like in the mail, and they're so cute. They read the instructions and then they put things together, but there's always, the last 3 boxes was all about like the scientific method and like how you ask the question. But then at the end, there's always an answer, and it's satisfying for my children. Like they want to finish it because they want to get the answer. And now this is really making me think that we should be leaving that experiment with more questions than we have the answer. But I think as a mom, I'm still learning this, that it's okay if at the end of our day, we're not supposed to finish what we started, right? It's supposed to be a continual build on, gradual, like coming to just ask more questions. And also traditionally in school is just all about testing and answers rather than it is leading with the questions, but we have the privilege to teach our children differently.
We do. If you think about the public school system is a staircase, right? Each group is set to a particular set of standards and a particular criteria. They have a set mindset. A growth mindset means that you never get it. You're constantly climbing. A growth mindset means that you never reach your destination because you're constantly moving forward. So the very first thing that you have to have is a growth mindset. You have to realize that if we don't walk away with more questions, deeper questions, better questions, more open-ended questions, if we don't walk away with richer questions, then how are we even going to discover the richness of our Father in heaven, who is so far beyond the box that we put him in?
That's good, because people don't want to, they feel like and me too, in the beginning, like 3 years ago, I was upset that I had questions that I didn't know the answers to, and now it's funny when I'm mentoring other people at my church, and they're asking me questions and I'm like, let's try to figure this out together. I used to think that's like a reflection on me that I didn't know enough, but in reality, it's like, we're supposed to be asking the questions. And so when we have more questions, it's not a sign of, I don't know. To me, it was like when I couldn't figure out an answer to a question that I had biblically, right? I thought down on myself, or I started questioning my faith. Like this is probably like around 5 years ago. I came to this point where I'm like, I don't have all the answers, especially that family was asking me, but I was just obeying out of love. And it just, because it wasn't good enough to certain people that I didn't have a direct answer, I started thinking that of myself. But this is so encouraging to me, because we're teaching our children that it's okay to have questions. We're supposed to have questions. Yeah, it's just so good.
So one of the questions that was asked when we came here was how do we motivate our students? How do we motivate our students? And my answer to that question is this: what questions are you asking them? So we come back with this. I don't have the answer for that, but I have some questions for you. What questions are you using to answer to what questions are you asking them? So how do you motivate your students? What questions are you asking them? If we don't walk away with more questions than we do answers, then we've had the wrong conversation. So when we leave here, we know that motivation is a byproduct of 3 consecutive things: passion, significance, purpose, which leads to significance, which leads to passion, right? So your homework is to sit down and write all of the questions. Write all the questions that's going to create a growth mindset, that's going to start the wheels turning in the minds of our students, but not only in them, but also in us. Because if we don't have a growth mindset and we're not moving forward, what can we ask them to do?
Kim was asking, are you offering them ideas they can ponder, or are you giving them pre-digested facts?
I don't know. Which one is it?
I knew you were going to say that.
This wasn't a question.
Okay. Oh, okay. Yeah. I get it.
But you know what? It's true. You know, which one are you offering them?
That's true, right?
And then my question to you is, which one's going to yield the greatest reward?
Yeah.
I mean, there may be a season in their life where pre-digested facts are probably going to be kind of important to help them be able to make a decision in their life. But this is what's the key to this. If they did not come to the decision themselves, they will not own that decision. You can tell them all day long, this is what they need to do. But if you don't ask the questions that causes them to come to that conclusion, they will not own that answer.
I mean, it's like, it goes back to like us, like, through this process of, I've done things, eating clean for one, I did it way before I even understood why, or that I even read it. I just did it because somebody else did it, and it didn't last very long. And then I started reading the Bible and actually seeing what it said and studying it. And I had way more questions, but I understood enough to understand, and then now it's like, wow, okay, even though I have more questions still, I understand almost the significance of it, like you're saying, so wow, this is so
but you know what, it's the same thing when we go back and study the question, what about the sacrifices? Okay, let's ask that question. What about the sacrifices, right?
Yeah.
Well, that question just opened up more questions than it ever did answers. Okay. And when we go back and we ask questions that challenge our theology, that challenge our current value system, that challenge our current ceremonial system, we ask questions that challenges us, we are going to be challenged to be better tomorrow than we are today. But it's going to lead to more questions than it does answers, because the journey forward is paved with a question mark, not with a period. Because if you have a question mark in front of you, it's going to lead to the next question mark. If you have a period in front of you, you're going to stop. If you stop, you have a fixed mindset. If you have a question in front of you, you have a growth mindset. And the whole point of being able to develop personal growth and to be better tomorrow than you are today, and to grow not only intellectually, but spiritually, to grow emotionally, to grow in your EQ, in every area that is so far beyond the curriculum, which is actually the name of my class, Beyond the Curriculum. We're looking beyond the curriculum. We're looking at the heart of the issue. We're looking at the core of the issue, and being able to take that information and cultivate a question that's going to take us to the next level. We cannot continue to move forward in our love for the Lord if we don't ask him how he's doing that day. If we don't go to the Lord and say, hey, Lord, we learn, you know what? I tell my children, and I tell other people as well, it's really great to have a conversation with God. And our lives are changed when he speaks to us, more so than when we speak to him. But the only way he speaks to us is when we ask him questions. If we come to God and say, God, I have, and we lay out all of our statements, then yeah, we're gonna do better because we laid it before the Lord and he's gonna handle it. But our lives really change when we say, but God, I don't understand the scripture. Can you help me understand it? Can you help me understand what you're trying to say here? What do you mean about, the land has a Sabbath year? What do you mean when you say these are the consequences for 1,000 generations? What do you mean when you're telling us to count the Omar? What do you mean? What does that say? How does that work? Who is this for? When does this apply? Why are we doing this? It's those questions that we ask to God that God speaks to us, and that's when our lives are changed. It's through questions that our lives are changed. It's through questions that we find purpose, that we find significance, and that we develop a passion based on that purpose and significance. And it is through that that motivation is automatically a result. So how do you motivate your children? You ask them the right questions. That's what I got.
Thank you.
It took a whole hour just to tell you that, right?
But it was so encouraging, and I feel like, yeah, it has us all asking questions, so that's good.
Oh.
Yeah. Thank you, Christal. We have like 4-ish minutes. Does anybody else want to unmute and share anything? Any takers?
Tara says that this is cultivating critical thinking. Absolutely. Absolutely. And Tish says, answer a question with a question. Absolutely. Absolutely. We have to answer a question with a question. We can't give answers. So I just pray that each one of these ladies here are able to develop that growth mindset within themselves. I pray that they're able to share and impart that acquisitive curiosity of growth mindset to each and every one of their children, no matter where they're at. And not only that, but to their fellow sisters that they're taking this journey with. Because we can't just sit back and say, this is the answer that you need, or this is the answer that they need, because they have to ask the question and get the answer from God that's rightly fitting for their journey, so that we're not bullying each other, right? So
Thank you, Christal. We really appreciate you, and we love you.
we'll see you guys later.
Thank you.